Chattisfying.
So the Zelda Timeline is basically the chronology of how the Zelda games fit into the history of Hyrule. So if you know about the Zelda Timeline, you know that Skyward Sword chronologically is like the first entry. And then I think it's like Minish Cap and maybe like Four Swords or something like that.
It starts off and then it splits on Ocarina of Time and it gets super duper confusing. Yep. And
that's the part I have a problem with. That is the main issue I have with the timeline, is that, okay, so the way that the timeline splits at Ocarina of Time, there is the child, and this is all at the end of the game, so there is the child timeline where Link gets taken back to being a child. There is the adult timeline where Link remains an adult, and then there is the third timeline where the hero falls to Ganon and dies. My big issue is that only one of those things happened. Only one of those things happened at the end of that game. I remember very clearly, and I've beaten Ocarina of Time a lot of times in the past 5 months. There is only one thing that happens, and that is the child timeline, where Zelda sends Link back to being a child, and then Majora's Mask. Essentially, right? Because Navi leaves at the end of Ocarina of Time, and then Link is just left alone with this, like, what I assume is an abundance of cursed knowledge. Ocarina of Time did not end with Link remaining an adult. Ocarina of Time did not end with Ganon defeating me. Otherwise, I would not have gotten a game over and then reloaded from my previous save and then gone back and had another shot. So that's why I think in my mind it is very difficult for me to understand why that was even necessary, for them to just create that. And I think that there are plot holes, and I kind of want to, instead of immediately speaking on that, I kind of want to move into where I think it should go from here, because Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are not part of this timeline, obviously.
I mean, they've tried to put it in here, haven't they?
Well, fans have, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately what I would probably like to see is just for Nintendo to be like, hey, when we made all of these games, it was just fun, and we were really focused more on like the individual stories, and we were focused on the mechanics of the game for the console that they came out for. It wasn't really supposed to be tied together. We did this for you all because it's all about the fans and whatever gooey, heartwarming bull crap that they're going to sell to us to make us think that they care about us in any capacity, of course. However, I think what they'll probably end up doing, and what I would like to see them do, is to be like, okay, you all care so much about the lore, you care so much about these timelines, Breath of the Wild started it. So now Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are a completely new timeline.
Yep. And that's what it is.
But the thing is what we need to all remember, because I feel like a lot of people don't really think about this, because people have tried to put Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild into the existing timeline.
I definitely think that they're trying to move away, aren't they, from this?
So this might not have been a hot topic. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Because I mean, we all agree. Because they're definitely trying to move away from this, aren't they, with the new games, because they don't fit in this chronology at all. Like you say, people are trying to fit it in, but it doesn't.
The only way they do, again, is just from the memories of Tears of the Kingdom being the answer to why there are ancient ruins in Skyward Sword.
Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom already clashes with Breath of the Wild. It kind of goes into what I was already about to say, because I mean, this Fallen Hero timeline, like you say, it's crap because it's a bit of a cop out, because it's like, oh, if the hero of time had died, this would have happened. And these are all of the old games, because they obviously didn't have any sort of connected timeline in mind early doors. The first time I ever heard of this kind of idea of these three different timelines was around the time when Twilight Princess was around, because Twilight Princess and Wind Waker so clearly don't happen on the same timeline. Like it's very difficult to kind of marry them together, and this is where this whole sort of split timeline thing came in as a fan theory. And I think literally it's just this is an example, one of probably not that many examples I can think of, where a company has listened to its fans, and it probably shouldn't have. because around the time that Skyward Sword was new, they made it canon by adding it to the Hyrule Historia. And it's a lovely fan theory, but I don't think it works as a canon because, like, when I was a kid, I always saw these games as completely separate. And in actual fact, a lot of them, apart from maybe Skyward Sword, are a lot of fun if you take them as their own single thing. I mean, sometimes you get like a direct sequel, like Majora's Mask is a direct sequel to Ocarina of Time, and Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks are direct sequels of Wind Waker, but generally speaking, I always kind of saw it on a very similar kind of thing to Final Fantasy. Like each time the Final Fantasy number goes up, it's a completely different story. Yet some of the characters are named the same thing, but they're different people. You know, it's a completely different world. It's a completely different story. It's got a completely different narrative. And I always kind of saw it that way. Even when it was just a fan theory. And I really liked the fan theories. I love fan theories of this game, but I kind of feel like most of them need to stay as fan theories, man. And I feel like this is very much that, because they've kind of written themselves into a hole. And I think they're kind of realizing this now. And I'd be very interested to find out where they go with the next game, the next full game, not the one that's been announced. Because the more games that come out, the more this doesn't work. And I don't think it ever really worked in the first place, to be honest. I'm not quite as... Because I'm all right with the adult and the child timeline. The adult timeline, for some reason, on this is called the Missing Hero timeline. The Fallen Hero is the one that I've always kind of had a problem with, but I can see what you mean as well. With like the only one that really happens, the one that you see at the end of Ocarina of Time is the child timeline.
Do you want them to go back to a world where each game is a standalone thing? Or do you want them to have a timeline that makes sense with no plot holes?
So
based on
legend.
Then we're not going to be able to make one.
Timeline. This is my thing. I don't mind a timeline. I don't care about that. I mind... It's not on the screen anymore, but I mind that one. I think that one is bad. It is very bad. I don't like either do it right or don't do it at all. I don't care. I just don't like this.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I mean, I think they've gotten to the point now where they've written themselves into a place where they can't make a timeline that's going to make any sense that isn't this. So if they're going to do anything, they basically have to just ditch it, I think. And I do feel like that's kind of what they're trying to do at this moment in time. So we'll see. But yeah, I definitely agree with you on this.
Consider yourself Chattisfied.